A man crouches over dry, cracked earth. Nothing looks unusual. Gravel, dead grass, dust. But within half a minute, he's back on his feet, walking with purpose. He knows which way the animal went, roughly how big it was, whether it was running or ambling, even how long ago it passed. No camera, no equipment, just his eyes on the ground. For most of human history, this wasn't rare. It was as instinctive to our ancestors as reading a street sign is to us. Today, almost no one can do it. Most of us would walk across that same patch of dirt and see nothing but dirt. So what happened? What exactly could ancient humans see that we've lost the ability to see? The answer points to a form of knowledge so rigorous, so demanding, that some researchers now argue it's the true birthplace of scientific reasoning. Not in Greece, not with Galileo or Newton, but in the footprints hunters read in the mud, long before any of them existed. To understand tracking, you have to understand the world that demanded it. For hundreds of thousands of years, there was no farming, no stored food, just what you could hunt or gather. Go too long without meat and fat, and you died. Here's the catch. The animals worth the most calories were also the hardest to catch. A kudu can hit 60 kilometers per hour. A wildebeest outruns most horses. A zebra's kick can break bones. With only spears and throwing sticks, early humans had to get close, meaning they had to find the animal first, undetected, before the throw even mattered. Miss that step, and nothing else happens. That's why researcher Louis Liebenberg calls tracking humanity's first true information technology, older than the bow or any refined weapon. A spear pointed at empty bush is useless. The weapon was always the last step. Tracking was the foundation everything stood on. Bands that repeatedly failed to find prey suffered chronic hunger that wore down immunity and fertility, a downward spiral. Only the best trackers survived to pass it on. And over hundreds of millennia, that pressure reshaped the human brain in ways neuroscience is still untangling. So how did anyone learn this? They started as toddlers and never stopped watching. Hunter-gatherer kids tagged along with adult work from the moment they could walk, absorbing lessons no one formally taught. Thousands of repetitions embedded the patterns so deep that reading sign became automatic, the way a fluent reader sees whole words instead of sounding out letters. Even their games, chasing lizards, following each other's footprints, were unconscious training. By 20, a hunter-gatherer had roughly 15 years of continuous observation behind them, the same kind of deep, wordless expertise a driver builds after 15 years behind the wheel, just tuned to ground, plants, air, and animals instead. Start with the most obvious sign, a footprint. It's far more complex than it looks. An animal's foot transfers force into the ground, which deforms according to physics. How hard, at what angle, how fast. Crumbling edges, compression on the floor, even tiny radiating cracks all carry data. From one print, a tracker could read species and rough body mass from how deep it sank, gait from stride length, and injury from an uneven antalgic pattern, deeper on one side, shallow and irregular on the other. That animal became a priority, slower, easier to close in on. Overlapping tracks revealed herd size. Small prints beside larger ones meant a mother with young, a different situation than a lone bull. But footprints, it turns out, were the easy part. Real mastery meant reading ground with no prints at all. Bent grass springs back upright at a rate set by heat and humidity, so the angle of a bend tells you if an animal passed 10 minutes or 4 hours ago. A snapped twig's height reveals shoulder height. The exposed wood starts pale and damp, then darkens, another clock. Crushed leaves darken as their moisture evaporates. Even snagged fur on a thorn hints at species, from its color and texture. Then there's smell, an area most assume gave humans no edge. In 2017, neuroscientist John McGann overturned a century-old assumption in science. The idea that humans smell poorly traces back to one 19th century anatomist's guess, not real data. Our olfactory bulb has a comparable neuron count to other mammals, and we outdetect dogs on some compounds. For a hunter, that meant scent trails from territorial glands, fresh urine, blood from a wounded animal, even mud churned up near a water crossing, all readable without a dog's nose. Sound mattered just as much. Birds react to danger before humans ever see it. Alarm calls specific enough to reveal not just that something moved, but roughly what and how far. And silence itself was data. When the background hum of insects and small birds cut out all at once, something dangerous had entered the area. Together, these signals let trackers do something that looked like telepathy, but was really prediction. Prey have habits: when they drink, where they rest, which paths they wear into the land over years. A tracker reading 2-hour-old prints, combined with time of day and terrain, could skip the trail and walk straight to an animal's likely resting spot, arriving before it did. In the dry season, as water sources shrank, whole populations funneled toward what remained, and mud around a waterhole became a census of everything that had passed through. Trackers shifted method with the seasons. Vegetation reading in wet months when rain erased prints fast. Dust and wind patterns when the dry ground held nothing. Timing a track may have been the hardest skill of all. Exposed soil starts dark and damp, then lightens as sun and wind dry it, at a rate set by soil, temperature, and time of day. Sharp edges round off in wind. Rain before a print smooths it. Rain after leaves pockmarks. Crushed vegetation inside yellows on its own clock. Stack enough clues, and a tracker could judge 30 minutes versus 4 hours old. The difference between a hunt worth chasing and one that wasn't. Serious hunts were team efforts. A lead tracker on the main line, flanking scouts scanning for sign or ambush risk. A rear member planning the encirclement. Coordinated through silent hand signals, since sound carries too far in open bush. Once a herd's direction was set, hunters fanned out ahead in an arc and waited, cutting the animal off instead of chasing it. Applied geometry at landscape scale. Prey evolved right back. Kudu learned to walk a straight line, double back inside their own prints, then leap sideways into brush, hiding the departure point. Wounded animals circled downwind and lay facing their own trail, scent carried away from the approaching hunter. Rivers erased both scent and print at once, ending a trail cold at the water's edge. When a trail went cold, trackers didn't stop. They built a hypothesis from terrain, time of day, and habit, predicted where the animal would reappear, and checked. Wrong guess, new hypothesis, try again. Observe, hypothesize, test, revise. The basic structure of empirical science. Which brings us to Louis Liebenberg's central claim. After years with sand hunter-gatherers in the Kalahari, he argued in his 1990 book, The Art of Tracking, that tracking is the evolutionary root of scientific reasoning itself. He described 3 levels: simple tracking, following clear prints; systematic tracking, using logic to fill gaps in a fragmented trail; and speculative tracking, building hypotheses about an animal you can't see, then testing them. When Liebenberg asked expert sand trackers if they could recognize one animal's individual footprint, they found the question almost absurd, like asking a librarian to tell 2 books apart. Harvard's Daniel Lieberman called the theory highly original and deeply important. If it holds, hypothesis, testing, and revision didn't start with the scientific revolution. It started on the African savanna, possibly over 100,000 years earlier, in the dirt. Different environments bred different traditions. The San and Hadza of southern Africa built perhaps the most sophisticated system ever documented, including persistence hunting. Harvard's Daniel Lieberman and biologist Dennis Bramble mapped the anatomy behind it in a 2004 Nature paper. 4-legged animals cool by panting, locked to their gait, so a full gallop in heat overheats them fast. Humans cool by sweating, millions of glands, little body hair, upright posture, shedding heat far more efficiently at speed. A kudu can outsprint any human, but kept at a trot with no shade, its temperature climbs while the hunter's stays managed. After several kilometers, it stumbles, stops, head down, and the hunter closes in. Documented Kalahari persistence hunts have covered 15 to 35 kilometers at the hottest part of the day, above 40 degrees Celsius, trackers reading sign at a dead run throughout. Arctic hunters faced the opposite problem: snow that recorded tracks with incredible clarity but kept changing, drifted, buried, crusted. They learned to read ice crystal condition and crust hardness to judge a print's age even once buried. Aboriginal Australian trackers worked the other extreme, ground so dry that prints vanished within hours, pushing them onto scuff marks, disturbed lichen, and flipped pebbles, showing their unbleached underside. 3 environments, 1 shared logic. Observe, build the likeliest explanation, test it, revise if wrong. That logic never disappeared. Wildlife biologists run track surveys to census animal populations without capturing a single one. Kalahari trackers log sightings into conservation databases through the CyberTracker platform. Search and rescue teams use the same stride analysis to find lost hikers or wandering dementia patients. Military units read ground sign to estimate patrol size, the same process the Kalahari used 40,000 years ago, just a different quarry. None of these people were born with a gift. They learned it the way every hunter-gatherer did, through watching, practicing, failing, trying again. That's the part that matters most. We didn't lose this because our brains evolved backward or our senses got weaker. Research on smell and visual pattern recognition shows the hardware is still fully intact in every human brain alive today. What we lost is the training, the childhood immersion that once built it automatically. Modern life is engineered to erase natural signals: pavement, climate control, food from nowhere, one synthetic smell replacing the scent map that once told a hunter where the wind came from. We're not less capable, we're less attentive because nothing around us rewards that attention anymore. But the ground never stopped writing. A footprint in wet sand still carries the same physics it did 300,000 years ago. Bent grass still rebounds at the same rate. Researchers studying San and Hadza tracking have found that people with zero background, given real instruction, start developing genuine reading ability within weeks. Not mastery, but recognition that the ground is full of information and that it's learnable. Once that shift happens, it tends to be permanent. A patch of gravel stops being just gravel. A bent stem becomes a direction. A bird bursting from a hedge becomes a warning that something is moving right now. This is what we've mostly lost. Not a better sense, not a forgotten superpower, just trained attention to a world that never stopped talking. Every footprint is still a sentence. What was here? How long ago? Where it was headed? How it felt? Written in the physics of weight pressed into yielding ground. The only question left is whether anyone's still reading.